April 15th, 2021 Board of Health meeting. I'll just go through the protocols now before we get started. Pursuant to Governor's March 12, 2020 ordering and suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, any Nantucket public body that holds a meeting will do so via Zoom video conferencing. The video conference will be shown on Nantucket's Government TV YouTube page. Attendees must register to participate. The registration link is unique to the meeting. The registration link can be found in the description of the Nantucket Government TV YouTube live feed for the meeting. People registering to be an attendee must use their names. Otherwise, they will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. Attendees will join in listening mode. They can click the raise hand button if they wish to speak. The chair will call on those who have raised their hands in order they were raised. If you do not have audio capable device, the Q&A button can be used to type a question. The YouTube chat will no longer be enabled. Any questions that cannot verbally be asked must use the Q&A function. All questions should be directed through the chair. For roll call purposes and attendance, as I see you, I'll go through the board members first. Please acknowledge that you are here. Malcolm McNabb.
Present.
Meredith Lepre.
Here.
Melissa Murphy.
Present.
I see Jim's trying to connect. If you want to give me a thumbs up. Okay. We'll go to Roberto, Health Director.
Here.
Mark Crowley. Kathy LaFave.
Present.
We also have some other attendees tonight, and I would just ask that you, when you do go to speak, for whatever you're going to speak on, please acknowledge who you are for the record. So we have a big agenda tonight, and I think we have a meeting that's coming up at 5, so we'd like to get moving. So first thing is just to remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded by video and audio. Next, if there's any public comment out there that's not on the agenda, and I'll have Roberto look for the hands.
Yep, we look good.
Okay. Next on the agenda, approval of the minutes from March 18th, 2021. Can I get a motion? Any additions or corrections? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor by roll call vote. Malcolm McNabb,
Yes.
Meredith Lepre,
Yes.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
James Cooper. Okay, I'll go to Roberto for the Mayhab grant application discussion.
Yes. So I have Mike Hugo here with us today. The MAHB is the Massachusetts Association of Health Boards. They have been working really hard for us to get this grant in for the 2 islands, and we're looking to be the primary host. And I'll let Mike run us through the whole thing. So take it away.
Thank you very much. And first, I want to thank you for inviting me here today and tell you that I'm jealous. You guys are the luckiest people on earth, not because of where you live in your situation, but because of the guy that just introduced me. Roberto was our health director before he came to you. And I will tell you, you have the gem in Massachusetts. And it's always fun to drop Roberto's name everywhere I go, because it gives me instant credibility with the other boards, especially in that area of the state. So this is actually the second grant that I've worked on through MAHB for the islands. We did not include you in our first grant because quite frankly, there was no need to. It was a $38,000 grant to study the issues of a biologist being assigned and attached to a board of health, or to the six boards of health on the other island. I knew that $38,000 grant was going to lead to more, and it did. So the first phone call I made was to Roberto and told him, we've got one that I think you guys will be interested in. As you know, you have to go to your town meeting to get your budget every year. You have to beg and grovel. And the hardest part I always found when I went to town meeting for my Board of Health was that we were doing our job and we were doing it well, which meant we were invisible. And being invisible, they don't think that you need money, because what do you need money for? Who are you? You don't do anything. So an effective Board of Health is its own worst enemy when it comes to funding. And Massachusetts is one of the only maybe 2 states, maybe 3 states in the nation that the state doesn't fund local public health, that it comes out of your municipal budget. So this year, MAHB, we decided we were going to seize on COVID, because everybody now understands that they have a Board of Health in their town. Everybody understands that we're all underfunded, and everybody understands that we've been working. I will tell you now, I know how hard Roberto's been working, because I speak to him at hours that every one of you are asleep when we speak sometimes. And that's normal. I talk to health directors. My record is 2:45 a.m. I got a phone call from a health director who just couldn't sleep and apologized for calling me at that hour, but it was okay. I was awake. But that's what COVID has done to us. So now that we're on the radar, and we have an electorate in Massachusetts that understands what boards of health can bring to the table, now we become sort of a factor because of what we've done with COVID. So I have a long time friend, and Roberto will vouch for the fact that one of my longtime friends happens to be the Senate president. And back when Roberto was here in Framingham, I used to call Senator Spilka and tell her, we need this, we need that. Don't you understand? Boards of health have nothing. And I bothered her for years. And this past budget cycle, she sent me a text message, and she said to me, you're going to love the Senate budget. I stuck $10 million in there for you guys. It will probably get shaken out. It'll definitely get diminished, but I put it in there for you. And as it worked out, it didn't get diminished. And when the governor signed the budget, he made a comment that it's about time we do something for local public health. So now we have this $10 million fund. We don't know what to do with it, because we've never had it before from the state. You know, we advocated like mad to get it, and it's like the dog that caught the bumper of the car finally. We didn't know what to do. So DPH said, we're going to set up a series of grants. And they said, we're going to take $9 million of the $10 million, and we're going to give 30 grants for $300,000 apiece. What we need you to do is show us that you can bring health boards together that traditionally don't share resources, and that traditionally have been on their own but have extreme needs that would justify us funding a workforce development. So because of my ties with the Vineyard grant, immediately I called Roberto, because one of the things was they wanted expansion. And we had the 6 towns in the Vineyard already, so the only logical expansion would have been either Gosnold, which I'm not sure anybody lives there, or Nantucket, where I know that you have a really high functioning health department. So we started to analyze. I sent out to each of the 7. There's 6 on the other island, and Roberto, to each of the 7 health directors. I sent out an email saying, send me your wish list, please, as soon as you can. And this was actually 3 weeks before the grant even existed. And I started working at that point, because I wanted to make sure that when that grant came through, that we were going to get one. And so I met with all of the health directors across the 2 islands on several different occasions, and put together a wish list. And what I came up with was 3 items that the islands need. And you guys don't need the first item as much as the other island does. The first one is what I call a virgin health inspector. It's a health inspector who has not worked in New Bedford or Fall River or Leominster or Worcester or Springfield, but is somebody who hopefully would be homegrown on one of the islands, and understands the peculiarities and particularities of a seasonal resort type of community. I'm not from the islands. I grew up in Maine. I grew up in a little town called Raymond, Maine, on a lake called Sebago Lake. And my town went from 3,500 people to 35,000 people on Memorial Day. And then on Labor Day, you could hear the crickets again. It was exactly what you guys go through. We had this huge influx. So I understand what you guys are up against. So this first inspector position is someone that your health directors will all train to do it their way, to do it the island way. They're not going to go in heavy-handed and try to make a restaurant look bad so that they look good. They're going to work with that restaurant if they're having a problem. Or they're going to inspect the pools. They're going to help people move tables in the kitchen if they're in the wrong place. They're going to be hands-on islanders that are going to do this. That's one position. The second position is one that I think you do need, which is a biologist. And we're looking now to hire somebody. There's a guy named Dick Johnson. I'm not sure if Dick works, if any of you know Dick Johnson. He's the tick guy on Martha's Vineyard, and has been for over a decade since he retired or tried to retire, but he wants to fully retire now. And so what I put in for was a wildlife biologist / epidemiologist, and we call it an epidemiologist because we're supposed to look for core functions for this grant. And nobody's ever heard of a biologist being a core function of a board of health, but everybody knows an epidemiologist is. So we have this as a biologist / epidemiologist, and that person will work on both islands. And we'll come up with a deer plan that like they have. I know that you have some stuff on your island. I know that they have some stuff, but we want to bring together a force. Actually, I have position to hire one, but we have 3 volunteers that have already contacted me that are masters in public health students that live on the other island, and they want to do internships. So we're gonna get imaginative. That position, I think, after 2 years, there's 1 year. There'll be 1 year of learning and implementing, and doing it on both of your islands. And then after that year, I think somewhere in the second year, maybe in the wintertime when things are quiet, that's when that position should start looking for grants and bring in, to start to generate some revenues for the 2 islands to go above and beyond what the state's providing. The third position is, I think, crucial. The third position is a community health worker, although we can't use that term because in Massachusetts, a community health worker is somebody who's licensed by the Board of Registration of Licensing. But we're looking for somebody who works in the addiction, substance use disorder, psychological services, including things like hoarding and in the housing area to help with distressed housing. You don't have as much distressed housing as they do, although you have some needs there. But they have, I've learned through this education process I'm going through on that island, that they have 100 people living in cars, tents, breaking into people's sheds in their backyards when they're gone for the season, and living there through the winter time with no heat, no running water or anything of that sort. People who are lucky enough to get housing on that island, where there's a 3-month wait for 3-year wait, for public housing. If they get housing, they can't afford it, so they stop eating. So there's all kinds of issues that need to be taken care of. And I know that your island, although everybody says, oh, Nantucket, well, I know that you have an equally vulnerable population that is thriving in the summertime. They all have jobs and they all can do things. And in the wintertime, they're dying. They're absolutely in need of every kind of service that we can bring to them. So that's the third position, and that position really will hit the ground running with getting grants for this, that, and the other thing. That's a key position. I think that those last 2, I don't think you need the virgin inspector quite as much as they do on the other island, but I know that you need the other 2 very, very much, just from going through and talking with Roberto about what really happens on your island. So now we do not have the grant yet. We've written the grant, but it's on such a short time frame that I asked Roberto to let me have a couple of minutes with you today because the grant didn't exist until March 1st. Nobody knew about the grant until March 11th when they did the bidders conference, and all of the bids were due like April 1st or actually last week of March, I believe, if I remember right. So we had about a week to write it, and between now and May 1st. Is the little hiatus, because on May 1st, that's when the money is going to be actually sent to the host municipalities. So it's a real fast-moving target. It's two budgets, and the first budget is for 2 months for June and July. I'm sorry, for May and June, and that's really basically going to be to purchase computer systems, software, tablets for the inspectors, and equipment, and also to start the hiring process. Then on July 1st, that's when the main grant kicks in. The first segment of it is $50,000, and then the second segment is $300,000, and it's a 3-year program by the DPH, and they are planning on renewing it 3 times. So we're talking about 9 years at this point for this grant program. By then, the other grants that the people will have been writing for over that period of time will sustain it forever, we hope. And there may be more money down the line. There's tons of federal money coming in. We're planning on tapping into some of that for anything else that we need over and above. So that's where we are right now. We're waiting to hear. The reason I'm such a cocky, arrogant guy right now is that I know that they were looking for 30 grant applications for $300,000 apiece to make $9 million, and they got exactly 30. I was actually, deep down inside, I was hoping that we get way more so we could go to our state legislators and say we need more than 10 million. Just so you know, we've put in for next year's budget with the Senate. The Senate budget will show a $23.8 million allotment. Yeah, $23.8 million allotment for local public health. So this $10 million is looked at as just the start. It is not in the House budget yet. We're told by the House, which released their budget yesterday, we're told, don't worry about it. We're planning on putting it in on an amendment, and it's something that we're going to argue about at the conference committee. I actually got a text message from Karen Spilka this morning with a little heart saying, don't worry, we've got you. So I think that we're going to be fine with keeping this thing going. And I'm here to answer any questions, and I really just wanted to meet you for the first time, and I'm not going to be a stranger. I'm going to be, as soon as it's safe to get down there, I'm going to be there as soon as I possibly can.
Any questions for Mike?
I will say that this is a lot nicer than last night. I appeared before the Aquina Board of Health last night. I don't know if you've ever been to Aquina or not, but the minute I introduced myself, I was told, you're here to take our power away from us. We're not interested in this grant, so you might as well just get off right now. We've got nothing to say to you. That's how it began. And it went downhill from there for the next hour and 30 minutes.
I got a question for you. If we were granted one of those positions, does that position go away, or is it?
No, that's the beauty of the three-year programs. Right now, we don't know that it's going to be there after 9 years, but we know it's going to be there for 9 years. And like I said, at least 2 of those positions are easy. And Roberto will tell you this because when he was in Framingham, we got some grants for the community health worker portion of it. And that's easy money to find, especially when you're talking about 2 islands off the coast of Massachusetts. You've got the rural grants from the federal government. And MAHB has sort of adopted this. This is kind of our pet project. And so, if I see other grant money, I'm going to go after it. I didn't go after, I'll tell you, there was a HRSA grant for $1 million for 3 years for substance use disorder. But I thought that if we got that, it would maybe affect this grant. And this grant seems to be a more public health spirited type of grant. The idea comes from, there was a special commission on local public health that the legislature put together, and this was one of their recommendations, was this particular program. Any other questions?
I think this sounds amazing. So the community health worker position would be dealing with some of the addiction issues that we have and the housing issues that we have on the island.
That's correct.
Because I work with Addiction Solutions, a nonprofit here dealing with, we kind of do a little bit of everything as far as drug and alcohol addictions. And it's, I think, a very large problem, as well as I work at the schools, and I think that the housing issue is huge, especially with COVID. I think it really has highlighted for me how many people are living in such dense housing, because when we are contact tracing in the school and we realize that this kid lives with 5 other kids in the district, and we have to start looking, and the school nurse is talking about, so I think that it'd be wonderful.
You and I are going to have to be very good friends. Because I'm going to need to reach out to you a lot. In fact, I'm going to ask. I noticed you don't have a chat option on here, but Roberto, you'll make sure that everybody has my email address, and I believe I have all of the. Let's see, I have. I don't have yours. You'll send me everybody's email, hopefully, Roberto, and I'll keep you in the loop. I have sent Roberto the actual filed documents that we filed to get the grant, and he has them there if you want to see any of that information. I don't know if he's sent it out or not yet, but we've got it. And I am truly, this is such a huge part of my life right now. So don't worry if you ever have to call me on Sunday afternoon or Sunday night or whatever. I don't care. This is what I do. So
Meredith?
Another question with the wildlife biologist doing stuff with, I'm assuming, some tick stuff, which I also have been involved with because my father does quite a bit of it. What about looking at like the Pfas in the deer? I know that they have gotten some private money to do looking at the livers of the deer to see if it's in them, because a lot of people go out and go hunting and are eating that meat. And if there's a lot of PFAS, I think that is something that as the Board of Health, we really have to consider, because then people are ingesting it, and we know it's in the water. We know. So I don't know if that's involved in it.
Where did you guys get PFAS on your island from?
Everywhere.
The airport is one of them.
Right, I forgot. Right.
We also have a landfill that used up until the 80s burning landfill. So there's also, dioxane contamination, things like PCBs. So we've got enough work for a biologist here for an entire career, maybe 3.
Okay, and I do need to say one thing, that my official work uniform when I deal with boards of health, particularly toward the beginning, and watch Roberto's face, he's going to die right now. But Roberto arranged for me to have this hat from Nantucket, and I do wear it, and I do wear it in public, and I think that it tells the story. But it does have, it has Nantucket right on it, and it says Nantucket on the back. So I'm with you guys. Here you go, Roberto. You never thought I'd show that to them, did you?
Melissa?
Thanks, Steve. Mike, it's very nice to meet you. Thank you for this opportunity and working on our behalf for this grant. I think it's exceptional, and I'm looking forward to a positive result, not the bad kind of positive result, and hearing more about how we can use these funds and take advantage of this. Thank you. This is great.
Thank you. And you're on the Board of Selectmen, is that correct?
I am.
Okay,
Yes.
so if the Board of Selectmen would like me to come and talk, I as you can see, I love to talk. I'm
Yeah.
a Roberto's friend. You got to expect it. Is there anything else? I know you have a huge agenda. I saw it's actually in front of me right now. So, okay, well, thank you. And anytime, just reach out to me. I'm here for you guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. And I'm looking forward to this.
Very much.
All right, we'll see you. Bye-bye.
Okay, next on the agenda, loan for Galt, 17 Ridge Lane.
Steve, I just want to disclose that I hired Dan Galt through Mainstay. I don't think that influences my ability to vote on this, but I just wanted to disclose it.
Okay, next.
So this is a loan application for a septic repair. To my knowledge, we have no objections to it. It's a straightforward loan application.
Okay, I get a motion to approve.
So moved.
I get a second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor by roll call vote, Malcolm McNabb,
yes,
yes, all right. Meredith Leffery,
Yes.
Jim Cooper,
Yes.
Melissa Murphy,
Yeah.
and Steve Isco says yes. Next, release of a loan for Maltby 20 Equator Drive, and also to allow the chair to sign.
So we were wondering if, so this is the release of a loan that's been fully paid off, and that way we can get it removed from the registry so that they can move on with their lives. We were wondering though, if you wanted to make the motion to have the chair sign in perpetuity for all releases, in order to prevent having to take this vote every time.
So those should be two separate motions, Roberto.
Yes, please.
Okay. I make the motion to have the chair sign on behalf of the Board of Health for loan releases.
Second.
All in favor by roll call vote, Malcolm McNabb,
yes,
Meredith Leffery,
Yes.
Jim Cooper,
Yes.
Melissa Murphy,
Yes.
and I'm not sure if I can vote on that or not.
I don't see why not. It is the chapter as the chair.
Chair says yes.
Then I'll make the motion to release the loan for Maltby at 20 Equator Drive.
Second.
Okay, all in favor by roll call vote, Malcolm McNabb,
aye, yes,
Jim Cooper,
Yes.
Meredith Leffery,
Yes.
Melissa Murphy,
Yes.
and Steve Isco says yes. Thank you. Next, so we also have another release of loan for Malu 13 Hawthorne Lane. They never used the funds.
None of the funds were used. We do have them. It's just none of the funds were used. So this would allow us to release it and bring it back to the septic revolver.
I'll make that motion to approve.
second,
Okay, all in favor by roll call, Malcolm McNabb,
aye,
Jim Cooper,
Yes.
Meredith Leffery,
Yes.
Melissa Murphy,
Yes.
and Steve Visco says yes. Next is release of an ACO for 324 Nantucket, Grennan. There's been an active in compliance septic permit issued.
So this is one of our legacy ACOs. We're not issuing the ACOs anymore. Once they pull the permit to do it, we have to release it. So we have no objections.
Motion to release.
so moved,
Here a second.
Second.
All in favor by roll call, Malcolm McNabb,
yes,
Leffery,
Yes.
Jim Cooper,
Yes.
Melissa Murphy,
Yes.
and Steve Visco says yes. Okay, next, extension of sampling variance for Massachusetts Tier 3 beach in Sconset.
So this is the same variance that we've been putting in. This is one of the beaches that doesn't tend to fail at all. So we're allowed to apply for variances to lower the frequency of testing. We just need that. We just need to vote so that we can file it to state.
Okay, can I get a motion for the sampling extension?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor by roll call, Malcolm McNabb,
yes,
Meredith Leffery,
Yes.
Jim Cooper,
Yes.
Melissa Murphy,
Yes.
and Steve Visco says yes. Okay, next on our agenda, variance from 105 CMR 590, section 3, 502, which is rice preparation SOP.
Yes. So I'll let John run through this, but this is a preparation for the acidification of rice. It requires a variance from the board to allow it. John, would you like to?
Yeah, just as Roberto said, it's adding the vinegar to drop the pH level of the sushi rice for sushi in order to work with it at room temperature. It's a standard thing for sushi places. This is the same company that operates out of the Stop and Shop on Sparks Ave. And they provided their HACCP plan to me, which I've reviewed and is very comprehensive. So I see no concerns at all with this.
Does anybody have any questions? No, seeing none, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
All in favor by roll call, Malcolm McNabb,
Yes.
Meredith Lepre,
Yes.
James Cooper,
Yes.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
and Steve says yes.
The work was done without a plan of view.
Thanks, John. Oh. Okay, variance from 105 CMR 590, section 6, 101.11, flooring.
Yes, this is a variance request for the green. I do not see their representative here, but this is a request to allow for a non-absorbent flooring in the retail area for India Street, where the new green is going to be where the bean used to be. I believe Kathy, I think you're here with a recommendation, or John, I don't remember. John.
Yeah, I've been reviewing the plan. So yeah, I have an application for the old bean downtown on India Street. The new business is going in there. In short, what has happened here is they installed a flooring down in the retail section, what will be the retail section of the store, where there's going to be refrigerators with display of food, packaged food, which they're going to sell, packaged dry animal food, and it's a hardwood floor, so it'd be an absorbent flooring material, which it's just not conducive to this retail area with the refrigeration and exposure to moisture and spillage of any products that end up on the floor, and mopping the floors, mold. So this variance is for them they're trying to install the wood floor, and I have denied them of that so far and have told them they need a non-absorbent floor material for that retail section.
So are you saying that this work they've already done it and now they're looking not to have to replace it?
Yes. As you may know, the store is not open yet. I think they purchased it maybe or looked to move in last year, and COVID happened, of course, and that really put the brakes on a lot of things. However, the flooring was installed. I'm not sure why that was prior to us even receiving an application for the food establishment. And then, of course, now I see it in the application that was submitted. So it's unfortunate, but again, it's you need the proper flooring in this retail area to safely wash it and prevent mold and other sorts of things. Washability, durability, stuff like that.
Go ahead, Jim.
So none of this was covered under the building, with the building permit, or in other words, they didn't need a permit, or they weren't advised by the building people what they could use for the floor?
Not that I know of. I don't know of any building permit they have. They might have a building permit. I'd have to check in with them, but the floor was installed, I know, last year, around this time last year.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
So these establishments, when they do any renovations, are to submit a plan review to this office, so that, you know, we don't cost them, or they don't cost themselves more money than they need to. You know, they bring it in, they give it for our review, and we check it for code compliance and then approve it. In this case, they went and did it, and then months later came in with a plan review with wrong flooring in this area. And I think what John also was saying is that I don't think the whole floor has to be is a problem. It's a section of the floor which they can cover. And John can correct me if I'm wrong. But anyway, you know, just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, that's correct. All the food prep areas and everywhere else has the proper flooring already from the previous establishment. This is just a new, different kind of store. A market, I should say, is really what it is. With refrigeration and, as I said, raw animal meat for sale, prepared food for sale. So it's not conducive to holding up against the traffic and being washed. It's a hardwood floor, and it needs to be something that's easier to wash and non-absorbent.
Go ahead, Jim.
So is the floor completely installed?
As far as I saw from a year ago, yes. So.
And so what they want is a variance. They want to leave the existing floor where it is, and they're just asking us for a variance.
Yes.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Thanks, Steve. Is there a covering that they can put over the existing floor so they don't have to rip that up? Is there something they can put over it?
Yeah, there definitely can be. Yeah, there's definitely some products they could roll out to put on top of it or over it, I should say. So, yeah.
Go ahead, Kathy. You're still muted.
See if that works, I hope.
Yeah.
They could cover that new floor that they put down with a commercial grade vinyl tile, composition tile, or a sheet, a vinyl sheet that would be commercial grade, and then they could put some plastic coving around the wall in any of the areas that have food or food products. And again, they've been sent our plan review. I would say John probably sent it to them 3 or 4 times over the last year. And the work was done without approval and without, giving us the plan review. It only showed up probably within the last month. So, we always tell people don't start any work or spend any money until you get approval. And unfortunately, they went ahead and did it anyways.
Okay, thanks. Well, I think I see where this is heading. So I'd like to propose a motion to deny the variance, and they'll have to put some type of non-absorbent back over whatever they need to do for the floor. So
I move we do not approve the variance, deny the variance.
okay, can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor by roll call vote. Malcolm McNabb,
Aye, yes.
Mary Fleppery,
Yes.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
James Cooper,
Yes.
and Steve Visca says yes. Great, thanks. Variance for Bar Yoshi, bathroom requirements for seating under local reg 14.
Yes, so this is a variance request from your, from the normal code to allow for less bathroom space. I believe Mr. Noyes is here as the applicant. And actually, Terry, I'll let you take over.
Hey, Roberta, how are you?
Not bad, how are you doing?
Good, good. You know, John Hedden has been a welcomed addition to your team. Absolutely. Very helpful, good ideas. He gave us that idea of the takeout window last year, which was a home run. You know, it kind of kept people outside a little. No, it kept them out a lot, but it ended up driving a lot of our takeout sales. We ended up doing almost 40% of takeout revenue last year, which was up about 28% from the year before. So takeout was a big deal. On the wharf, you know, we've expanded and we put a lot of interest and financial dollars into the expansion here. We're looking from going from a 400 square foot restaurant with 14 seats to going to an 800 square foot restaurant with 49 interior seats. And that's the cut, from what I understand, is 50. We're just looking for a variance for the 12 patio tables or the 12 seats of 3 4-top patio tables outside. Now, the end of the wharf, about 100 feet away, is 3 public bathrooms right across from slip 14. And they house a handicap, a male and a female private bathroom. We used that for the last 2 years as our only source of bathrooms for the public. The small bathroom we had there in the 400 square foot side was only employees only. So they didn't have a problem walking at all. I've never really had an instance where we had an issue with them walking down to the end of the wharf. You know, we are in the net gain here of actually adding a handicap bathroom to the wharf. So we put in a wonderful, handicap full unisex bathroom. And, you know, in the end result, it's open to the public. So it's not just open to the restaurant, but if someone needed to use the bathroom, it's open. But keep in mind that a lot of our service, they never really entered the building with that takeout window. So 40% of the sales really was a hand sanitizer type situation where they didn't need a restroom or anything like that. You know, I don't know what else I can add to the board other than the fact that it's a gorgeous looking building and we're happy to be here. It's our 28th year of Sushi by Yoshi with a new transformation of 3 years under our belt for Bar Yoshi.
John, anything?
Yep. So this was Mr.
John.
Noyes is doing a major renovation there of his business down there, Bar Yoshi. When the plan review came in, I saw a floor plan and it showed, I believe it was about 58 seats in total. So I think there was, Terry, I think you said 12 seats outside. Out on a new decking
John,
area.
In a perfect world, if every 4-top had 4 people sitting at it, you know, that's the total number of seats, assuming that everybody's got a warm seat. However, in the restaurant business, a lot of times you're putting a table of 2 at a 4-top, you know, that handles 4. So, I mean, in the situation where you had every seat with a customer in it, it would be the max of 62. So I think I'm looking for relief for 12, John, right?
Yeah, I thought I remembered it as 58. But if you're saying 62, it's still over 50. So,
yeah.
And again, I go by the seats that's shown on the plan and I go by the regulations. I go by the food code and our local regulations, and local regulation 14 is if you have more than 50, if you have 51 seats or more, you are required to have 2 bathrooms. So when I do my plan review, that's what I go by.
And you do a good job at going by that, John.
Thank you.
Problem. I've just asked for some relief here today. I did ask to be represented, but there was a conflict with Rhoda Wyman, my attorney. But I'm not an attorney, and I'm just trying to pitch this the best I can.
Melissa?
I guess this may be a question for John or Art. You know, when I read this, I did take some comfort that there is bathroom access on the wharf. And I know that that's obviously would be why we would issue a variance. Do you think that this is an issue for the number of tables that he has? Like I go to slip 14, I use those bathrooms anyway, because I just prefer them. And then I was thinking about that area too. Do they have 2 restrooms, or is their seating limited to 50? Because I just don't know.
I'm looking into that now. Currently what I know and see in there, there's only 1 bathroom that that's in their possession, I should say. And they do have about 90 seats, I believe. So I believe they used to have 2 bathrooms. I'm not sure what happened, or I need to look further into
Okay,
that.
well, they're not on trial today, I guess, but I was just thinking about, I was just thinking about, you know, that's the flexibility and ease of use of those, the close proximity of those public restrooms gives me some comfort, as opposed to some other locations that don't have similar access.
Right. It's the regular, sorry, go ahead, Mr. Chair.
I've got a question for you and Terry. Those the bathrooms that are down at the marina have nothing to do with this place. So the bottom line is, can the person comply with adding the other bathroom if he wants those extra seats? That's pretty simple to me.
That's, as I said, I go by the regulations, and it's stated right there. So if you have 51 or more seats, I agree you need 2 bathrooms. You know, it's nice there's bathrooms down the way, but they're not part of the food establishment. If they're closed for cleaning or whatever reason, then there's a bathroom that's not available. So
Jim?
Is there enough room to put another bathroom in there so we can legally have the rest of the seating that he wants?
Can I answer that?
Go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, so it's an 800 square foot space. It's very small. If we did put 2 side-by-side bathrooms, we would lose about 12 seats in the restaurant. So we wouldn't gain really anything. So if we had to put the bathroom in, we would be under 50 seats. So we would only need 1 bathroom anyway. But you see what I'm saying? We would lose part of the dining room seating. So that would also be some water views and things like that. I really think that the net gain here is that, just like John said, if those bathrooms are closed because of cleaning or whatever that NIR controls, well, at least we have 1 more available for them now to wash their hands or use the bathroom. You know, the partnership with NIR and its tenants, we were able to use that, and they were giving us written permission that our customers were able to go down there and use those bathrooms. And it's been kind of a relationship like that for a long time on the wharf with just, a casual type use of bathrooms. So I think if you look at the long run of this, we're just trying to be straightforward and saying, hey, we want to have legitimate seats. We're not trying to pack seats in without your knowledge of them. We just want to be legitimate and say, we have, 62 seats that we're looking at, and we want to just go through this variance right now instead of getting fined or trying to be micromanaged down the road. That's it. And the net result, there's an extra bathroom, just like Melissa had said, another option for people walking by.
But the building is actually illegal if you continue to not have a bathroom in that building and depending on public bathrooms outside?
So we do have to have a public bathroom. Last 2 years, we did not have a public bathroom, and we had a so-called variance, I think, previously when Bartlett's Farm was in there, or I'd have to ask Rhoda. However, there was a use before we occupied it that permitted the variance.
Let's, Artel, go ahead.
Leslie knows about that.
So I'd just like to point out, like, regulation 14 requires a bathroom after 25 seats. So if you're under 25 seats, you're not required to provide one. You're required to provide it for your employees. I'd also like to point out that the business owner, Sushi Bayoshi, doesn't control any of those bathrooms that are on the dock. So when it comes to soap, paper towels, hot, cold running water, he's not in control of that. And it's a sanitary issue. And, you know, if he wants over 51 seats or whatever it is, he needs to put in another bathroom that he controls and that we can inspect and discuss with him any of the cleaning issues and whatnot. That whole dock area is just jam packed with boats and people all summer long. And, you know, we've determined that 2 bathrooms for a restaurant with a seating of over 50 is what's required. So, you know, my suggestion would be either knock your occupancy down to 50 or put in another bathroom that you control.
Go ahead.
So I would adjust the number of patio seats. I would take them away from the dining room and put them out on the patio, essentially, is what you're saying. So essentially I can have 25 outdoor seats and 25 indoor seats.
If you can fit them, yes, I suppose so. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you have the plans from Emeritus there that show that we could fit, you know, 58 or whatever. The 3 patio tables is what I was kind of voting for without having to change the setup of the dining room. You know, so basically now we're just, you know, we're going to transfer the seating from interior to outside and stay under the cap of 50, apparently, if that's the way the board tends to vote. You know, it's a shame because we really need more food seats, you know, with the Brotherhood closed and all the amount of people that were here last year. There just wasn't enough food service for these people. The demand was very high. And, you know, I struggled trying to feed all the people that tried to come to our restaurant. And, you know, people pulling up chairs and things like that gets out of control. I just wanted to be clean cut and have it known for the record that we're looking for this variant for the extra 12 seats outside, which don't really enter the building anyway. And without the restroom for the last 3 years or 2 years, they were walking down the dock and those bathrooms need to be open for the yacht people anyway.
Meredith, go ahead.
I just have a concern sort of generally of like, it does seem like a lot of restaurants already are using, and I don't know that there's something already set, but it sort of seems like a lot of the restaurants around there do use the dock bathrooms, and maybe they just are not following the rules. But I do just, it seems like there is a little bit of a precedent that and I don't know, I mean, you guys know better than I do, but it seems a little like there's a precedent of some of those restaurants already using those bathrooms. And I don't know if there's anything where NIR owns the buildings and the bathrooms, and or should they be responsible since they are renting space to restaurants to make sure that they are available?
Go ahead, Jim.
it'd be one thing if his restaurant has control over those public bathrooms, but they have no control whatsoever of those public bathrooms. They could be shut down any day. Is that right? I mean, you can't control, you can't say that we have enough by using that bathroom to cover your building and the restaurant legally. You're depending on them being public bathrooms. If you had control over them, it would be one thing. Then you could say, well, we control those bathrooms and they are for our people, but you can't do that. So as far as I'm concerned, you still need another bathroom.
Yeah. I mean, one of the hard things I'm trying to, you're asking us for a variance when you can buy so that you can have more. That doesn't make sense to me. It's like when that happens, your business model needs to go, we need to find a bigger place. So
we were looking to separate our takeout business from our restaurant business for the last year. And we were in negotiations with an NIR to separate our business into two businesses, one being a restaurant and one being a takeout place. And we haven't been unsuccessful, but that's already crossed our minds. But what troubles me is that I'm trying to be legitimate with you and honest with you when you have so many restaurants that have 2 bathrooms with 200 seats. And this goes back to Steve Butler with, trying to regulate how many seats on the number were on the building CO and with bathrooms. I mean, it was a nightmare for Butler to try to open up that can of worms on how you're going to get 21 federal to put in 2 more bathrooms and go across the board with the whole thing, where here I am putting in $300,000 of my investment money into this place, and I won't get the return. If I put another bathroom in, it doesn't make it financially feasible for me to generate those 8 weeks of sales. I will lose approximately $175,000 in sales just because I have to put that bathroom in. That bathroom will not generate any sales. So we will lose sales. It will be a loss for our company and very fragile financial times. But how are we going to look at all the other issues of Nantucket's restaurants? They're old buildings and they're not designed to be restaurants, and then they're made into restaurants. And I am, trying to work with you saying, let's, is there a certain number we can negotiate to? Can we negotiate to 60 seats or 58 seats? Or is there a smaller variance number I can use? Why 50,
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I just don't understand, when you were doing this complete renovation, you must have known that you were going to need another bathroom. But what did you do? You just built it out so you had as many seats as you could possibly get in there legally, and then worry about the bathroom later. Well, you can't do that.
Excuse me. No, that's not true. I'm going on the premise that our customers were able to use those bathrooms as a legitimate bathroom because there's so many of them down within 90 feet, I think I counted. But that in the last 2 years has been our go-to for the bathrooms. So I just assumed that our customers, not all of our customers will come into our place. They'll go still use that bathroom. However, with the handicap bathroom, I could have put in 2 smaller bathrooms, but with the handicap size bathroom with the 6 feet circumferencing and all that kind of stuff, it took up so much space. It ate into most of the footprint that we had available. Maybe can we negotiate I can't really plan out any changes to the floor plan because we're actively under build, but I didn't assume that I just assumed I was going to be able to use those bathrooms as a go-to for an initial bathroom. And then this would be my handicap version to add on. But I still don't think it's fair that there's so many restaurants on this island that house a lot more than the number that's accurate to show 50 seats. I mean, are you going to go back and to every restaurant on the island and say, okay, well, how many seats are on your permit? And then how many bathrooms you have? How are you going to correct that? or are you just going to let it slide? And then when somebody fills a variance out, you're going to judge what's right and wrong. I just think that in the end of the day, I'm adding a lot to the wharf, and yes, it is a business for us, and it's hard business. It gets harder and harder every year. However, I thought that would be just a small feat, asking for a variance for 10 seats. That's all I'm really doing. It's not the whole picture of 60. I provided enough for 50. I'm just looking for a variance. How about 8 seats? How about 2 patio
Yeah,
tables?
all right, Terry, thanks. Can we go ahead, Art?
Well, I mean, I don't really want Terry to answer this question, but I do have a question. Where are these facilities? Give us a call. I'm not aware of facilities with lacking of bathrooms.
So I can't answer that, Art?
I'd rather not, you come give us a call, let us know where they are, but where are they?
So okay. I got
Well,
it. So,
I mean,
right
I
now,
don't want
right now is not the time and place, and they're not in front of us right now. So,
right.
if anybody is there anything new to add, or Roberto?
I just thought it's pertinent to this conversation that those 2 bathrooms that are down across the way from slip 14 are actually part of the slip 14 lease. Those 2 bathrooms are an exclusive use agreement for slip 14, and they take care of the cleaning. We can't double count those bathrooms.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody want to start a motion?
I'll make.
Malcolm had his hand up before.
Oh, I'm
Did you want
sorry.
to add
Yep.
something?
No, I don't want to prolong this, but I think we did just discuss potentially another restaurant where this is an issue. I think if I go back a few years back, this was a major issue on the island, and it kind of went away. We talk about precedents. I think somebody needs to, everyone has so much time on their hands right now, but to really look at this as an island-wide issue. Is the present regulation what we really need? Is this a problem or not a problem? Because this is going to come up again.
Yeah, well, it will. Yeah.
And it's come up before. I remember, my memory's not what it used to be, but a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, this was a major issue, and then it just kind of, you never heard about it again.
I think it was a major issue. I think we had a turnover of a building director for that reason. If I read the newspapers correctly, but you never know with a newspaper. But I mean, I know I've got at least 5 off my head that I dine at all the time that I know only have one bathroom for a lot more than 50 seats. But I'm just looking for a variance for 10 seats, and that's it.
Anybody else? Melissa?
Yeah, I make a motion to deny the request for the variance.
Did I get a second? Okay, all in favor by roll call vote. Malcolm McNabb,
No.
Melissa Murphy,
Yes.
yes.
Lepre,
No.
and Steve Isco says yes. So the variance is denied. 3-2. Okay, Terry, thanks for coming. And
No problem. Thanks
you
for
want to get in contact with Art of who you think's under the same bathroom issue, be free to contact him.
Can I reapply with representation?
It's up to you.
I mean, I can.
And that would be at another board meeting.
Yeah. No problem. I appreciate you hearing the case, and thanks for your time, guys. I'm gonna reapply with legal representation. Thank you.
Okay, next we got a variance for 20 Rugged Road, mandatory connection to a municipal sewer.
All set. Thank you. Don Bracken from Bracken Engineering, representing the owner Peter Meerbergen, who's also on this hearing with his son, Brooke, and their attorney, Sarah Alger, is also present for the meeting. This variance is under section 69.03A, connection to public sewer. A sewer line was recently put in as part of the Pfas sewer expansion a few years ago. Then there's a connection for this property. They've received notice that they have to connect by August 1st, 2021. This subject property we think is very unique, and we'd like you to consider certain aspects of this property that we feel the existing septic system does not threaten groundwater, the harbor, or estuaries. The lot itself is 2 acres, and it was originally designed and installed in 1986 with 6 bedrooms. However, there's only been 3 bedrooms on the property since that time. I did do an inspection on the existing leaching pit, which would pass Title V. It's about 50% to its life capacity. And within the last several years and going forward, there's only expected to be 1 person living at the property. That's Mr. Meerbergen, who's 75 years old. In my variance request narrative, I'll just kind of go through why we think this property is unique. The existing septic system does not fall within the harbor watershed protection zone. The septic system is also greater than 3,400 feet from any wetland resource area. The groundwater in this area is about 24 feet below grade and about 16 feet below the bottom of the existing leaching pit. As I mentioned, the septic system is not currently in failure. The only sensitive aspect, I think, of this property is that it's located within a zone 2 and has its own well. But given the 3 bedrooms on the property and the 2-acre area, we exceed typical nitrogen loading requirements by 3 times what would normally be required, which is 1 bedroom per 10,000 square feet. I also included in the application package an estimate from Toscana for the design that we had prepared for the property. And this design would require a 500-foot length of force main from where the 2 houses are located and where the existing septic system is, out to Rugged Road where the connection is for the sewer. The $75,000 estimate from Toscana actually doesn't include fees, electricians, plumbers, and so forth. The owner has estimated that to be around $127,000. The owner would suffer an extreme financial hardship if he had to go through this expense to connect to the sewer. He feels that it's manifestly unjust not to give the variance in this particular situation. He would also like to offer, if you're inclined to issue the variance, conditions such as he would connect if he applied for a building permit to expand the property, or if he ever sold the property, that he would also connect. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Dawn? Really? Maybe not. I mean, I would just point out to the board, a few years ago, this came up on Old South Road with a couple different parcels in which we did grant the variance, being such an unjust means to have to hook to the sewer through. I know that we don't have it in 69 as a certain criteria, or maybe we could revise that at some point when people are seeking this variance, that it would have to be over a certain distance from the municipal main, but it is, we did grant it, I think, to 2 properties on Old South Road a few years ago.
I remember that. I wouldn't have a problem if there was the condition of connection with upgrade of the property or selling. but I would be interested in other comments.
All right.
Just hearing Don suggesting conditioning the property, I don't know how the board feels, but I think it's a fairly large lot, so any subdivision of it, new construction per regulation 50, failure or sale, those 4 things would trigger or should trigger, that'll be up to you, the sewer connection. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I don't think we would object to any of those. Maybe Peter would like to say something. I'm not sure.
I'd rather hear Jimmy first.
Go ahead. Yeah. Well, thanks. We'll go ahead, Jim.
Are there how many other people on Rugged Road are there in the same situation that he is? Are there any?
Yeah, I can tell you that this was sort of a spur in the system. I think there's only 4 properties on this end of the line that it affects.
So
it's very limited.
There could be 3 more people come to us for 3 more variances.
I know that one other person is already hooked up, and I don't know what the other people have done so far.
Everyone's different. Those couple houses might not, distance-wise, might not be as far to their hookup.
Right.
So, each case would be different. Did you want to add anything, Pete? Or
yes. Thank you. I'm glad to be before the board. I'm a little scared. One thing I do know is that, yes, one of the people that are on Rugged Road had a very short distance. He's a new young guy, and he went a very short distance. Mine is like, it's 500 according to the engineer. I feel it's 530, but there's also the other distance going the street. But I'd like to point out at this point in my life, I've got just savings. I have no stocks. I'm not a trust fund or anything like that. That this would be more than devastating. I know another thing is I cannot take a loan on in any way, shape, or form. I'd have no way to pay it back, and I couldn't. I feel like well, there's my property has been well maintained overall. The 2 acres has been environmentally I don't landscape. I cut and prune trees, all natural stuff that's been there. I don't have a garbage grinder, a kitchen under sink or anything like that. I put yeast in my septic. I get it pumped out on a regular basis. My whole yard is like a natural yard. There's no chemicals or anything like that. It's a sanctuary for like birds and animals and local chickens and everything else. I'm really proud that it's like that. At this point, I would like to be able to still live on this island, and I would like, when I pass, okay, it's a whole nother story. Then let the
He got stuck.
his internet probably froze.
Yeah, he froze there. In the meantime, we do have a comment from the public. If you would like me to take that while Peter gets his.
Yeah.
Sarah, go ahead.
I think I can tell you what Peter was going to be saying. This would be devastating for him personally. He understands when he's gone, his family sells the land or new people come along, then it has to hook up. The 4 conditions you mentioned are completely acceptable. He just wants to be able to continue to live there. And if he has to upgrade and spend I think $120,000 $5,000 to do this connection. It's just not going to be possible for him to do that. It's going to devastate him.
And could these conditions be recorded at the registry as part of the
As
variance?
part of the variance, yes.
And then Bill Greeter.
You there, Bill?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point of clarification on my part. From my understanding, this gentleman's concern and personal issues, obviously, as the sewer department expands its reach, or as a developer purchases a chunk of land and pays for the interceptor to go down roads that aren't serviced, it's certainly, I think you've already seen where people are starting to come in just like this gentleman because they have to, because now sewer goes by. So the suggestion would be that the board has some sort of language like you're talking about, but it becomes sort of a boilerplate attachment so that people know that if they're going to apply for this, there is a hook that somebody down the road's got to pay the piper and has to do this. So I'm not speaking for or against this gentleman, just the process going forward. The same issue, if Nantucket ever gets sewer, it's going to be, people banging on the door looking for the same thing. So I think it's a good exercise to prep for what's coming down the road. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thanks. Well, that's something we can visit down the road with some type of amendment on 69, which we set some type of parameters for being able to ask for a variance. Does anybody have any other questions for Dawn or Sarah? Jim, go ahead.
I just want to make sure that if we do grant this variance, the restrictions on that property are forever. I don't want him passed on to somebody else, someone else buys it and they're sure, I'll tie into this thing and I'll subdivide this into 6 or 8 lots. I want to make sure that the land stays the way it is in perpetuity and no one can ever subdivide it, or it stays with all the restrictions that we're going to put on this if we grant the variance forever.
Well, the variance is only, with the conditions of one, if he ever sells it, they have to hook to sewer. If he creates a subdivision, he has to hook to sewer. If he pulls a permit to add on to his house, he would have to hook to the sewer.
Right.
Those,
Okay, fine.
The property has to remain the same. Malcolm?
I move we accept the variance with the 4 conditions as outlined.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor by roll call. Malcolm McNabb,
Yes, aye.
Meredith Lepre,
Yes.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Jim Cooper,
Yes.
and Steve Visco says yes. Thanks, Don.
All
Thanks.
right,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Okay, next we have a variance request for 53 Tennessee Ave, 59.4362 is the parcel number, local reg 51.02B and 5102C.
Yes. So this is a Tennessee. Yes. So this is a variance request for the setback for a soil absorption system and the separation for the reserve absorption system from the property line. I believe Jared Bozanowski is here for the applicant as well.
Go ahead, Jared.
Yes, I hadn't intended to make a presentation, but this property was, or this lot was created in 1981, and the owner purchased it, I'm not sure, shortly thereafter, and it's been vacant ever since then. And we have requested these variances because the lot is so small. First of all, it'd be difficult in the first place to satisfy that 50-foot property line offset. And at the same time, the separation between the primary and reserve would, fall in that same category. There is an irrigation well on one side of the property that restricts a portion of that land, and there's a water supply, private water supply well on another property on the opposite side, which pretty much negates 80% of the land as potential for subsurface sewage disposal. So it kind of left us in the northeast corner of this property, or the southeast corner of this property, I guess, for a system. And it's pretty much the only place we could squeeze the system in.
Do you want to comment on anything, Art?
Yeah, so these are good regulations. The board has traditionally granted these variances in Nantucket, but most of the time they're all pre-existing houses with failed systems. So it's pretty much just sort of a rubber stamp. This is a vacant lot, different story. But I think the regulations were put in place due to the water quality in Nantucket, due to the shallow water table and whatnot. So, now with the advent of town water being out there, and a lot of people hooking up, not everybody's hooked up, but a lot of people hooking up. I think the fair thing to do here is, because, like Jerry pointed out, the lot was created prior to these regulations, that, the variances be granted. But I mean, that to me is what the board can hang their hat on. I think if this was a different situation, the lot was created after the regulations were created, I think the answer would be different. But this seems like the fair thing to do, and so would recommend granting the variances.
Anybody else have any questions? Any for Jerry or Art? Okay. Go ahead, Meredith.
I mean, how is this? Is this just different than some of the other ones we've heard where things were just built in the wrong spot? Measurements were done wrong. Is this different because it was made before these laws were in place?
It's different in the sense that things weren't built in the wrong spot. They were built where they were built prior to regulations, and then the regulations came in, and we aren't going to say, hey, you got to move out of your house now because you can't meet these setbacks. They meet Title V, which is the minimum standard. They do not meet the local Board of Health Nantucket regulations. So the board is on the other ones that are developed, it's maximum feasible compliance. They meet the setbacks as best they can. I don't believe we've ever had a vacant lot in Nantucket that we've granted these variances to that I can recall. And I just wanted to point out to the board that these regulations are still good and should be recognized. But in this case, I think the variances should be granted due to the creation of the lot being before the regulations were created. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. Can I get a motion to grant the variances?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor by roll call vote. Malcolm McNabb,
Yes, I.
Meredith Lepre,
Yes.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
James Cooper,
Yes.
and Steve Visco says yes. Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.
Okay, next, we have a variance request for 4 Fisher's Landing Road, local reg 51 and 5102 setbacks.
So similar here with 2 property line setbacks. Well, one was a property line setback. The second one is a private well setback, and then a soil covering. They're asking for 4.4 feet of cover over the soil absorption system. Looks like Don Bracken has dropped off. But yeah, this is a design for an upgrade of a existing failed system.
Yeah, yeah, and I think they're putting that in right now, and I think that was all due to the, the cover part was due to the existing elevation of the waste pipes that were leaving the house, and I don't think it would have been feasible to try to, or they couldn't change the elevations from the inside. So it's pretty straightforward, isn't it? All right. Yeah.
Yeah, this one's straightforward. It's a repair. This is basically what I was
Maximum
just talking
feasible
about, where you have a developed property and a small lot, and it's maximum feasible compliance.
Motion to approve the variance.
So moved.
I get a second?
Second.
All in favor by roll call. Malcolm McNabb,
Yes.
Melissa Murray,
Aye.
Meredith Lepre,
Yes.
Jim Cooper,
Yes.
and Steve Visco says yes. Okay, tick-borne disease, numbers for 2020, and some new info.
So yes, always my intention is to make that big presentation like the one that I had. Let me share my screen for a second. If we all remember this. So we're going to be updating this. It's been a little bit crazy. So right now I'm just going to go quick and dirty. And the news is not necessarily good. From last year to this year, we have almost doubled in visits, and these are probable, suspect, and confirmed cases of these 3. Let me go ahead and zoom in on these so that everyone can see it better.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There we go. So from that infectious disease report, from when it was written to now, in 2018, we had only 13 cases of Babesia. In 2019, that more than doubled to 29, and then now it's at 31. Part of that is one of the things that we're seeing, that we're expecting, that one of the major Babesia vectors is here, which we are now seeing all the Lone Star tick on island as well. It's not the predominant tick. We've only really been, Sam Telfer has only really been picking it up at Tuckernuck more, but same thing, just like COVID, we have to assume it's already here. For some odd reason, anaplasma was low in 2019, but it came back with vengeance last year to be more than double our 2018 numbers. And then Lyme tripled from 2018 to 2020. A lot of this is because, let's be honest, when COVID came in, we focused all of our attention to COVID instead of tick-borne illnesses, which is exactly what Malcolm was worried about when he brought it up last year. And then as we move forward, we're going to have to really make a blitz to get more information out there about where we are with the illnesses. So I'm just going to really quick do that and then go into our more of a discussion. As one of the things that we're looking at, when the position that Mike was talking about, That biologist position is primarily looking to be for tick-borne illnesses, because the vineyard is seeing this very similar numbers. The bad news behind all of it is we're now going to have to go back and re-get to the gains that we had done in the previous years. We were at a very nice downward trajectory, but it just goes to show, you have a mild year, a mild winter from 2019 going into 2020, and then distraction from the ticks because of COVID, and we had an explosion of cases. Exactly what Malcolm and Meredith were worried about last year. And with that, I would rather just do this as a discussion right now before I do a whole report.
Can I speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think that the Lone Star tick is definitely here. I have seen them on my parents' dogs and found it crawling on me. And I think, something to sort of consider is that a lot more people stayed here this winter. So I think that, some of those cases might be cases that they went back to wherever and got diagnosed. And also we're spending a lot more time outside. I think, especially anyone with small children, you're going to be sending them outside to run around anywhere and everywhere, since you can't really, we couldn't go to the playgrounds for a while. And, but I do think this is a big concern because we are still in COVID and we still are, as spending more time outside. And I actually put it in my nurse's note for the school. One of the things was to do tick checks on your kids, because I am finding them on kids in school. And so I do think this is an important thing to look at. And those numbers, maybe they would have been the same, but I do think we have more people that stayed here that may have gone back to wherever and been diagnosed there, and we wouldn't have gotten to count those numbers. So it's nice to have those numbers. I am concerned about the Lone Star tick. I think that's going to cause some big problems for us.
Yes. So actually, you're absolutely right. One of the things about we should start putting in our educational material is about the dangers of the Lone Star tick. Two primary ones is that they provide, it's called STARI, Southern Tick Associated Rash Illness, which is something we've never seen up here with our deer tick population. They don't typically carry that. They are also known to carry the Powassan virus, which is a different type of illness altogether. This one, it's one of the only viruses that a tick will be able to transmit. And then the part that freaks most people out, especially hunters, is the alpha galactose allergy that it tends to happen after a Lone Star tick bite. It's not super common, but it does happen, which means that when a person is bit by a Lone Star tick, it does transmit does create a sort of hypersensitivity to the sugar alpha galactose, which is found primarily in red meat, which means people will not be able to eat red meat after they get this, and that is really one of the main reasons why people hunt. So it is a big deal. Now that I've cranked out these numbers this week, it really kind of shows that when we put too much focus on just one side of public health, the other side of public health tends to drop a little bit. So I'm going to do my best to create a outreach campaign on this, see if we can get as much information as we can out there.
Malcolm?
Hey, Mr. Chair, I think Roberto, it's not just focusing on COVID. I mean, that's a possibility. But the weather was perfect for the ticks going into the season. And as Meredith pointed out, people have been outside this year, not before. And the other issue is that as she mentioned, we're catching numbers that otherwise we would have missed. So it's not just the function on COVID.
No, it was a perfect storm. It
It's
really was.
yeah, it is. So I think it's more of those three conditions, but we still have to have an adequate educational program, and we have to do more. I know we've talked about deer calling and all kinds of other things, but maybe when we have this biologist, we can get focused on not just education, but something else.
Absolutely. And then,
Hey, anybody more discussion on that, or should we just move to your COVID update? Okay, we'll do that. Let's do your COVID-19 update.
yes. So one of the big ones with under the update, I do need a consensus vote from everyone before I forget. Since we're not trying to gather people into rooms for the fertilizer licensing trainings, I do need a consensus vote so that we can extend the fertilizer permits that people have that will be expiring this year by 1 year, so that we don't, we don't break what we're telling people not to do by gathering, but we usually do the trainings in one big group. So if we can do that, that would be really appreciated.
As a motion? Or
It could be consensus.
I'm fine with that, Steve.
okay.
Yeah.
Can I get a motion to move,
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought we could just do consensus. I'll make a motion to approve the extension of the fertilizer licensing for 1 year due to COVID-19.
Second.
All in favor by roll call, Malcolm McNabb,
Yes.
Jim Cooper,
Yes.
Melissa Murphy,
Yes.
Meredith Leprey,
Yes.
and Steve Visco says yes.
So we're moving forward with where we are. We have Gary here as well because of last night's conversation about the You Smell It program. There is a lot of conversation about that right now. The other questions that we might have, that you may have, is we are in the middle of a surge. We are seeing that 7-day average going down. So it is good that it is going down. But one of the big conversations that we're having with the state is just COVID might actually just become endemic to the United States. We have about approximately 25 to 35% of the population of the United States that are refusing to take the vaccine, not necessarily for vaccine hesitancy reasons like they had immune responses, or they a big example is if you're people who are pregnant, things like that. It's not necessarily that. We are just seeing people across the country denying the vaccine from a principle standpoint, and the Johnson & Johnson hiccup has not helped us at all. But otherwise, other than that, from a local perspective, as we see this, though we do see it be endemic, what that means is more so that we will probably be seeing a seasonal vaccine every year, kind of like the flu shot, due to waning immunity. It's not terrible news. It's we were kind of expecting this. It's just one of those things that as things start going down, things wane down, there will be a low-lying level of infection across the country. And with that, I know, Malcolm, you had some things to say about the research being done, and then I know, Gary, you're here.
Yeah, just Roberto, if I may ask, Mr. Chairman, what about the hesitancy rate on Nantucket? And how are we dealing with that?
So we are reaching out through, Jericho already had to leave for the other meeting. Through Jericho and the Human Services Department or Division, he is working with, they like to call themselves the CRRT. I am breaking on the acronym right now, through its Brookmore, Debbie Dubois with the Immigration Resource Center. I know Kellyanne Kumi is with overhead from the schools is there as well. And what they're doing is they're trying to reach out to our minority communities on island using diversity safe language, things like that, so that we don't step on toes. It's the best way to say it. So what we're trying to do is remove that sort of hesitancy from a knowledge base. If we are seeing some people, especially within some of our minority communities, are hesitant to taking the vaccine based on a lack of knowledge. And Brooks Group has been really good at dispelling a lot of those rumors. But there are some people who are denying it on a principled basis, and that one we've only really seen in our surveys among staff and things. We've only really seen that between like 10 and 15%, which is really good in comparison to what we've seen in other parts of the country. But I think it's going to be a slow, arduous process, but we are working at addressing hesitancy here.
Do you want to jump in, Gary?
Hi, everyone. It's good to see you again. Hi, Malcolm invited me today to bring up the topic, I guess, of the You Smell It test and research. And I guess the reason that I find this an opportunity I'm pleased to be here to talk about it is, we've gone through a lot of discussion through the COVID phase around, and also through the Lyme phase of, can we do research here at the hospital? In fact, can the town independently do research, or the public health department independently do research? And the answer is, if you have the knowledge, skill, and ability, the resources to the compliance, understand the risk, and know that there's a good amount of liability in any research, depending on how the study is written, research can be a good thing. So I'm setting the stage for where we were way back last March, when COVID first started really coming out, where we wanted to move into a serology study. And so I really pushed hard to be able to get our IRB at the Mass General to approve a study that was co-sponsored. Actually, the primary investigator was Dr. Rochelle Walensky, who's now the head of CDC, and myself, who was the local PI individual here. So we wrote our plan and sat down with our staff and our physicians, and ultimately got approval to do that research study. The cost to do it was estimated to be north of $300,000. And we know that we had wanted to get some data to find out prevalence of COVID on the island at that point in time. And unfortunately, it took us 4 months to get approval through the IRB to how that environment works in research. Lots of questions, lots of answers, lots of measured risk profile and understanding. And we got the approval right in June. So at that time, we decided that we were already flooded with year-round residents. A lot of folks come in. It was just diluting. It was washing out what we hoped we would have had as data. Now, that said, I personally and my team here, my risk manager and compliance officer, learned what it takes to do research isn't so much about getting approval, although I found that to be extremely challenging. It was a wake-up call. It was the back end. If we started to do the actual testing, how does that compliance work? How do you store samples? What do you have to do for permissions? I mean, there's a whole host of things depending on how the study is written. This study was written so that the Cottage Hospital would have had to do all of that record keeping, every I, every T crossed. And at the end of the day, with Malcolm and others on our research and education committee, we decided that we weren't going to move forward. Number one, for the money, and two, because we weren't going to get the data, and three, we just didn't have the skill set here to do it, and to do it so that we felt it wouldn't come apart. So the research is great to be done in institutes that are funded research, where they're dedicated to hire employees for that. It's just not Nantucket Cottage Hospital. Now, that's research that has an element of compliance on the back end in a written plan. We are moving forward with the Mass General on a sniff test that a gentleman, Dr. Albers, who's a neuroscience individual at the Institute, has gotten approval for the IRB. But the reason we're moving forward with it is that his protocol is written so that a sniff card can be provided to us, and we do nothing with it and create no record keeping requirements. All we would be doing is creating a sheet of instructions, handing them out to every person that comes through a drive-in portico or is tested. And it just says, if you'd like to volunteer for this research, take this card, scan the QR code, and it takes the individuals to a website where they have to do all the registration, and all the record keeping is kept there, and it's provided to the research primary investigator at the Mass General. In this research that this is, no data will come back to the patients, no data will come back to the Cottage Hospital, no data will come back to the physicians here at the Cottage Hospital. It will simply be an aggregation of information that goes to the primary researcher to make a determination on how to use that data to improve the product and determine if there's another step for a broader study that would have some outcome of data coming to us. So these things are really complex. They're not simple. They take a lot of resources. And we support them if we can be involved. That's why this one, our legal department and our risk department felt that there's minimal input for us to make the study go south. So we've had other individuals come forward. Pfizer came forward, wanted to do Lyme research at the Cottage Hospital. We read their study. They had already written it up. It had many locations around the country where they were doing these Lyme studies. And when we looked at it, it required that we hire people, that we purchase freezers that are specific. Their funding did not cover that. They gave so many dollars per a number of hours that people worked on this, but it didn't cover the cost. So, our mission here is to provide bread and butter healthcare medicine to the community, good public health, care, access to primary care. But we don't have the philanthropic dollars that other companies are putting into funding these lapses in costs of coverage for research. So we backed away from the Pfizer after we heard that. And I believe that Dr. Lepre might be considering it individually, but he's certainly not employed by the Cottage Hospital and could do his own research if he felt that he could meet all of those parameters. And then you come into the COVID sniff test that was presented yesterday, and that was not presented to Malcolm and I. Malcolm and I have interviewed this gentleman twice, I think twice, right, Malcolm?
Yes.
And simply what we asked was, could you show us your plan? So we talked about the theory of what he wanted to achieve in the study, and we talked about any written plan, and we did not receive a written plan. We were not aware of an IRB that had actually been selected to be applied to with a plan. And we weren't certain, the way he had described it, that there weren't other sites that he wanted to involve. So we kept an open ear in both of these meetings and said, go ahead and do that homework and come back and give us an understanding of what this could be. But I took very painstakingly the opportunity to explain, as I am to you, if this is going to be like the Lyme study or COVID studies in their early framing that require back-end risk and data keeping, we just don't have the ability to do that. So he left, and my understanding was that he was going to do some of that work. And then I started getting calls from individuals in the community that said that they're using this product. But in our meeting, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Malcolm, I asked if this product was available commercially. To my understanding, he responded, if I remember correctly, that he doesn't have an EUA to do testing. I'd asked him, what pharmacy is it in? Where is it in? Well, I don't have an EUA, so I can't sell it. There's two things here that kind of blur the lines when people are developing research protocols. They want to have research done, which means there's funding for something to be researched to determine efficacy. And then they're simply doing a test that has no relationship to COVID, that just tests, can you smell? But of course, people want to draw the linkage to, well, if you can't smell, you probably have COVID. But the reality is that's really not true. There's a percentage of that, and maybe a high percentage, but you have to create enough sensory load to determine that that is an accurate correlation. So if these sniff tests under the use, smell, and environment, as identified by the X Prize, as I was understanding the explanation last night and personally the day before, if they're available, then to do smell testing, then give people information on where to buy them, give them a website, whatever. It doesn't require the cottage hospital. That doesn't require the town. But I can tell you that in this particular instance, at this point in time, we're not going to engage the cottage hospital in that research. So I really think that the question last night, I probably misinterpreted, was, does the town want to do the research? And there you go, Malcolm.
Yeah, I'm getting a little confused with the whole issue about what the real question is. We've been told, think out of the box, what the town can do, what the Board of Health can do. Let's find a way to use this test. The test is my understanding is approved for detecting olfactory problems, but it's not approved as a correlate or a test for COVID at this time. But the company has requested the FDA to issue an emergency use authorization, which would essentially be approval to use it. But even once they had that approval, I'd have to do different tests. And I think, as Gary mentioned too, the question is, how well can this test screen for COVID? It's not how well it detects the lack of smell. And apparently the test does detect lack of smell. Not all people who show an olfactory defect will test, an olfactory defect with a test will have, not all people that test with a COVID defect will have COVID. And this is what we'd call a false positive. And a false negative would occur when the test fails to detect the infection. If the false positive or the false negative rates are too high, it will not be good as a screening tool. The test may very well be a good tool, and the limited data that I've seen is encouraging. But again, it's not an approved product. It's not confirmed by an independent agency such as the FDA that in fact it's an adequate tool to screen for COVID. So the Board of Health or the town certainly cannot recommend the use of an approved test for public health decisions until we have such an approval. We just simply can't do it. And I think the bottom line is this: there is nothing to stop an individual or a business from using the test and taking the responsibility of following up upon the results. But that is the issue. And I'm getting a lot of pushback of why aren't we doing anything? There's nothing really the town can do or the Board of Health can do. We cannot sanction the use of an unapproved test. That's just not our legal mandate. We just can't do that. It would be far beyond what we should do. And the hospital does not have the capacity to do research. If somebody wants to do research, that's fine, but they would have to find a way to have an adequate protocol, statistically powered protocol, have a principal investigator, have a way to collect data and so forth and so on. We will certainly not stop it, but I think it would be very difficult to do. And if someone has the funding and has the capability to do it, that's terrific. It should be done. But it can't be done by the town, and it can't be done by the Board of Health, and certainly the hospital does not have the resources.
Melissa?
Thank you, Malcolm and Gary. And I have a quick question for you, Steve. Do we have a hard stop at 5 o'clock today?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, because I'm concerned that we need to have other substantive conversations around COVID, and I'm not sure that we should wait another month to do that. So I don't know if there's a possibility of deciding to continue this meeting at another date, maybe early next week or whatever works for people. But I have several concerns from constituents that I want to have a conversation about, and I'm not sure we can do that in 6 minutes. And then my other question is, even last night, I'm a little bit confused about what the direct ask is from the You Smell It representatives to the town and to the Board of Health. So it's not clear to me what the request was, or if there even was a formal request. I know that there was a presentation that we had earlier And we reviewed it, and I really appreciate your analysis of all of this, Malcolm and Gary, but I'm still unclear as to what they're asking the town to do.
So
And
am
is that
I.
because, okay, and I'm wondering, is that because they need to get on an agenda and talk to us about what they'd like to see next? If it's different than what we've talked about before, so that's another consideration, is that maybe this needs to come to us if there is a formal request. What is it?
Well, you know,
Yeah, I'm sorry, Gary. I took the You Smell It samples, and I'm healthy, and I failed the test. I think I have a terrible sense of smell. And so I think, but it is a very interesting screening tool. And I do like your suggestion, Malcolm, that if businesses feel that this could be a screening tool that would assist them as we go into this very difficult season where we're trying to outpace the spread of the virus with vaccinations, then, you know, I would be, oh, go ahead, Roberto, are you?
No, I just looked up, the Concom is not meeting at 5 today, so we can.
Oh, okay, fabulous. I kind of lost my train of thought there, but
Melissa, the reason that I jumped
comment.
in, the reason I jumped in last night when I did was because Derek took a good amount of time to present all of the things that, you know, had been recognized through the use of the You Smell It test. And then he presented an idea that, you know, the town was in an emergent situation, and as it related to research, you know, did you want to move forward? Were you interested in doing research? And I had just talked to him with Malcolm the day before on research and let him know where the cottage hospital was moving. That was the reason for my question. So I agree. It was not clear. On one hand, that there was this framing of this is a commercial product, and on the other hand, other side, it was we could cover all the lives in the community, you know, with use of this test. Do you want to do research? And so, you know, research is not, the intended outcome is not to cover a community. I mean, usually it's a very focused environment. So that was the point of where maybe the confusion was and why I stepped in.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Thank you, Steve. I know that there was an email correspondence from Kathy Slattery to town administration to get on as an emergency agenda item. And it was to formally approve Nantucket as an X-Prize deployment site, utilizing You Smell It as a COVID screening tool island-wide. Would that be a research site? And is that what I'm understanding? That's almost like a foreign language to me. I don't understand exactly what that
The only way that it
request
could
is.
be correlated to COVID would be through an IRB approved research program that, as Malcolm said, would link the use of that material to an outcome to COVID statistically significant. Outside of that, it would be a simple commercial product that detects how you smell or not.
Okay.
And so it was the intertwining of the COVID that was confusing. It is not a COVID product as it's designed for use, right, or licensed for use if it's licensed. That was my misunderstanding.
Yeah. And just one more, and then it is licensed to detect problems of smell, period. It's not licensed as a correlate to COVID testing. So we as a town or Board of Health cannot sanction the test, period. An individual wants to do it, fine. If someone wants to do a study on the island, fine. They don't need the Board of Health or the town approval to do that.
Sometimes we have short memories, and I just like to point out that Malcolm, it was actually February 3rd, you sent out the email explaining all of this, and I'm not sure if everybody got it, but I found it the other night, and it was after you had reviewed it with Gary and a couple other people. It was a nice detailed email that you sent out. That was February 3rd. So, which explains a lot of the things that you're explaining now. Meredith?
Yeah, I guess I feel like, can we move on from the You Smell It? I just don't understand the use of it. It's having, from a medical perspective, I just don't feel that it's very useful at all. And I feel like the hospital obviously doesn't want to do it. I don't blame them. We're not going to back it. So I understand people in the community are interested. I watched the select board, and I don't understand the interest in rapid antigen tests either, because I feel like those are not very good. I mean, that's why as the school, somebody in the state was making money on the rapid antigen tests, and they were pushing us to have them in schools, and it's a bad test. If you do a rapid antigen and they're negative, you send them for a PCR. If they're positive, you have to send them for a confirmatory PCR. Why am I going to swab all these kids with a rapid antigen test when I can send them to the hospital to get the gold standard? I mean, I really think we need to focus. It's nice that there are some places offering the rapid antigen, but it's kind of a garbage test in comparison. And so I really think we need to focus our efforts on the PCR testing. What I would like to see, Gary, is when we're around times like April vacation that starts after tomorrow, having maybe some extended hours for testing for people, or maybe some communication between Sarah Brooks and the other school nurses, about when we have a sports team or a large group of students that we have to quarantine, maybe having some extended hours to allow for that. Because I know there are days that when I have worked there that it's not that busy, but then I drove by this morning and it was very busy. And so I think it would be helpful for the community to be able to have, when we have a large outbreak or when we have, 19 cases a day, having some extended hours after that to allow people who are exposures to get in, because I know that there were days that they were cut off. The symptomatic exposures were cut off at 8 o'clock because it was already so busy at that time. And I do think that with summer coming and with travel, that I would love to see the hospital be a little more flexible in those hours. I don't know if that's a possibility.
Everything's possible, but I'll answer it this way, is that you've got one of the most progressive PCR testing sites in the state. How it flexes. We're shifting to put people over to vaccines. Typically the load is low. If we have a high rate of folks coming in, and today, there was a sports team, the entire sports team and their families showed up. Now you as a clinic and a hospital, we could argue whether that was appropriate or not to have that happen. And of course, then you've got a line that goes outside of the drive, and it looks like it's craziness. So we added their people and we address it that way. So it's a resource thing. And typically we're not going to make it so convenient that we've got resources that should be in primary care taken out of primary care. And I know you could agree with that. It's a balancing act, and we never know from day to day when that's going to happen. Yes, we can predict that after a holiday week, we know people have exhibited behaviors and they go out and they come back and they're either concerned or they're ill. And certainly we want to flex for that. So we are planning for that. So it's a day-to-day unknown that I think we're overall doing a pretty good job at. That's my opinion, and that's what we're being told by the community. But we will look at all holiday schedules and have some flexibility on that.
And if we have to hopefully not quarantine a large group of people within the town, hopefully that doesn't happen again, but it likely will. I think maybe town departments, whether different departments, the school, whatever, maybe having a person to communicate with the hospital, say, all these people are going to come on this day because this is the 5 days after they were exposed. And
Meredith,
you guys would be able to plan. I think that if there was a way to communicate that easily.
I think we're very proactive in that way. I mean, you look at today and the surge that we had, that occurred after our public health nurse spent a considerable amount of time with the officials in the school and laid out a plan that, as I understand it, didn't recommend, people coming, but that's not the decision that was made. So here they come. And so I think as a community, we need to not be hypersensitive and play on or overplay the science. We need to look at reality, and what we should be doing is
that's not my understanding of what happened, but we can talk about that another time.
May not be, but the surge happened, and we've tested all of those people. So we'll look to accommodate it, but at this point, not looking to open 2 portico tents and take more staff out of primary care, unless we see a continued surge that really makes the demand necessary, and that's not what we're seeing right now.
Does anybody, go ahead, Melissa.
Oh, thanks. I didn't realize I was unmuted the whole time. Sorry about that. Just changing the subject a little bit, I agree with Meredith. I guess there's no more merit to discussing the you smell it test. Some of the things that were talked about last night at the select board meeting were some questions about whether or not, because we seem to be getting behind in our ability to vaccinate, and we've got people arriving on the island in larger and larger numbers, so that we're in a bit of a surge at the moment. I don't know if that's the right phrase for it, surge or spike. I'm not a medical professional. I don't know. But I think that there's concerns about providing resources or recommendations, particularly to businesses and community members, on screening tools, best practices. I've heard a bit about the antigen test. I hadn't heard it quite as clearly and distinctly as Mary put it today. But that has come up as a recommendation if pharmacies could provide antigen testing. I know we talked about pharmacies providing vaccines, but I think there's a great concern from a public policy and public health perspective that the virus is here. We're in a very different position than we were last spring. There is community spread, and we're going to be welcoming thousands of people over the next 8 to 10 weeks. So do we need to, as the Board of Health, have a proactive policy or a plan in place to deploy if we start to see that the virus is spreading faster than we can vaccinate, particularly with the arrival of the variants and those messages this week. So I don't know what other board members are thinking about that. And I know, and I agree wholeheartedly with Roberto that, our businesses really can't sustain another season of shutdowns. And I think our families can't sustain that economic loss. But I'm really at a loss for what those alternatives are. Some recommendations coming to me from community members are revisiting screening tools, again, at areas, points of entry, at businesses. I just don't know what the next step is. And it feels like we have an opportunity to prepare, hope for the best, but prepare if things get worse. So I'm all ears.
Meredith?
Roberto, now that we have a public health coordinator, nurse person for the town, could the town engage in doing some of the testing? I don't think antigen testing is worth anything. I think it's garbage, but if that meant that it could take some of the pressure off of the hospital to have both groups involved, I don't know. I just, now that things have changed a little bit for the town.
We can definitely use the public health nurse as we can. One of the primary duty that she's been doing so far has actually been helping out at the clinic, at the vaccination clinic. So she's been working closely with Martha Lake Greenfield out there. And yeah, it's definitely possible to use her to do a lot of this there's a lot of this outreach out at the boats and other points of entry. I don't think that would be her best use, considering how much clinical experience she has. But we are looking we are advertising for the seasonal inspector and the seasonal COVID person, and so that we can definitely post them over at the boats again and the points of entry. As far as screening goes, We know that the temperature screenings haven't really been effective at all in preventing COVID because a lot of people aren't showing symptoms. And we don't have an approved olfactory screening unit right now. So what we are asking, what we can definitely do is use the expertise, Heather's expertise, and I'll have her at the next meeting as well. She's out today. So what I can do is use her expertise on how to provide some sort of guidelines for businesses coming into this summer. I know getting that out through the chamber and through our listservs and through the licensing board. She actually wrote all of the processes and the internal policies for OIH. So, and that was very effective. We only ever had one case out there, and we were able to arrest the spread really quickly, and that was all thanks to her. So we can definitely use her expertise to get that sort of information out as far as outreach. As far as other sort of lockdown policies and things like that, I think we would be really hard pressed to even get compliance if we were to pass it. In many ways, it would mean their business either way. If we start ticketing and things like that, it would put them out of business. If we do a lockdown, it would put them out of business. So that's just, it's really hard. We're in kind of between a rock and a hard place. The race is to get people vaccinated. I do know that one of the pharmacies is doing antigen testing, and one of the pharmacies the same pharmacy has also expressed interest in providing vaccines once they become available for them. And then Sunny at Family Resource Center, I believe it is, has also offered to be able to give vaccines as well. So once they become available to everyone, we will be able to roll it out.
Melissa?
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for that, Roberto. You know, I was just Googling around today, and I think there's some really great already cards. Maybe it's from the CDC or graphics. And I wonder if it's worth a letter from this board or your office to the boats. I know we have a little less control over national airlines, but maybe to Cape Air and Elite and some of the other sort of local servicing ones, that when people book a reservation, there's just a mention of, best practices for arriving to Nantucket. I go back to the messages we had last year that we are a precious resource. We have one hospital. We're seeing all these similar trends statewide and even nationally. And I just feel like we need to do a really strong job of communicating how we would like people to arrive into our community. And if I can help in that effort and helping to coordinate some of those materials, I'm happy to. Or being another set of eyes. And I don't know what other board members think, but I know that the screening can be impractical and probably illegal in some aspects. But the more we can do as a community to continue to beat the drum of best practices where you can get tested. I think Jason mentioned last night, we can't ask businesses to require their employees to be vaccinated, but encourage seasonal businesses who are bringing employees in to have their employees vaccinated before arrival. Those kinds of messages, I think, could be really important and critical right now.
Absolutely. And yes, we would take any help in drafting a letter.
I'm in.
I know Libby was going to reach out to the two boats yesterday. I think she did. I'll confirm that tomorrow. But yeah, any sort of letter that we can get, I think that would be good. The more outreach, the better. The only issue is that we only have one outreach manager for the town, and our office is going pretty flat out right now. So any help we can get would be useful.
I'll email you after this meeting and we'll figure something out if there's a way I can help.
Absolutely, thank you. And let's see what else, where we are. As far as the variants go, we're still waiting to get confirmation as to whether or not there's any new variants on the island. The BioBots sewage plant is testing for B117 right now, which was detected. And then I know that they're going to increase that to test for all the other variants as well. I just don't know if they'll be able to do that this week or if it's later. So we'll know soon. They're actually going to deploy that across the Commonwealth in that testing. And then with that, I think Gary, are you able to give out the news that you received yesterday at 5?
Oh, sure. I wasn't sure if you were able to tell the select board. While I was on the select board, Dr. Bidinger from the Mass General called me. He leads the vaccine initiative with the state as a liaison with Secretary Sutter's office. And he indicated that all of the states not able to give more vaccine, as I'd indicated, that they were willing to allocate doses that are still being given to the Mass General and give us a higher number. So that's going to be 200 more Moderna. And I know that it's at least for a week, and I got the sense that it might continue. So let's pray that it continues. So that's certainly good news and good advocacy. But, with, as you said last night, over 80% of the vaccine being redirected to FEMA sites, I'm amazed that we're still getting 1,170 Pfizer. And I will say that the community has really completed an early miracle, and that's vaccinating all of those that are at risk, the seniors, the first responders, and others. We've got a good rate of vaccine out there. I just wish that we could have the state recognize the true population of this island. When you look at a report and it says you've been given 104% of your population and you're asking for more, and that's not anywhere near the truth. How do we rebut those numbers? The sewage data that says, X number of gallons are going through, so here's how many people are here year round. Or, it's one of those conundrums that we're in, where as a country, we have people that are here that are undocumented. We have people here that haven't filled out the census, and yet we're being held to the lower numbers for the resources that we get to support all of what is here. That's what's frustrating in a public health environment. So I would only add, Melissa, to your question earlier about, what can we do? We should be focused on only doing those things that matter, where we feel there's really good results to your messaging point. One of the things that I had mentioned when I was on the radio recently was, if you're bringing workers over, you're an employer, have your workers quarantine for their 3 to 5 days until they can then be PCR tested to determine if they're infected or not, and then bring them into the workplace. If they're not vaccinated, if they're vaccinated, fully vaccinated, and they can document that, then of course that's not required. But it's things like that that make a difference in dense housing environments for spread. So whatever linkage that we can get out to our ethnicity, different groups of ethnicities, that seems to be where there early on was good saturation, and now I'm getting some messages from leaders in those communities that more messaging could be used. And that even things on our website for scheduling could be more broadly put into multiple languages in more clear ways, because people are confused. And then there are those people that don't have any electronics and don't know how to get an appointment and want to. So should we be reaching out to the communities that are probably going to be most impacted by this by having some mobile capability to go out and do vaccinations? And I think all of that starts to make a difference if we can, take some of that and go to those people. But yeah.
Steve, if it's okay, I love the idea of a mobile vaccination truck, but I was also thinking about, as Roberto's office had set out a request for some volunteers to help when the vaccine numbers go up, but maybe there's even a way that we can coordinate some volunteers to do a volunteer sign up to help people do that. It can be an overwhelming process if English isn't your first language and you're not adept at technology, hitting that refresh button 54 times and then having the times disappear can be really frustrating. Those are great suggestions. Thank you. I'd love to see mobile vaccine and ice cream trucks circling each other.
Anybody else have any comments or?
Just one thing that just got brought to my attention. New Hampshire announced today that they're going to be ending their mask mandate tomorrow. So that's going to be a lot of pressure on Massachusetts to follow suit. So just so you know, just as a heads up.
Meredith?
And Roberta, you probably know, or Gary, I was reading an article yesterday that said Massachusetts had the highest percentage of the variants. And that's based on 1.4% of our positives that are being tested for the variants.
Yeah, and that's the part that's a little frustrating about that. We're the highest because we're looking for it. You know, it's, you know, a lot of the other states, couple red states in particular, are saying we're not going to even look for it because why bother? But Massachusetts is looking. So we did, for example, we have the highest number of P1 of the P1 variant because of the outbreak that happened on the Cape. But that's because there's only 2 states that looked for it. The CDC is deploying their own people to start looking for it now in all 50 states. So that's going to be helpful. And then I know the B117 variant is the predominant variant in Massachusetts now. And I know I think it's in like 4 or 5 other states as well. So yes, and that's mainly because we're a major travel hub for education as well. So that's a big portion. We are seeing it a lot in the educational travel and vacation travel coming soon.
Okay, is maybe while I see if there's a reason why Victoria's Ewing's still on the.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I just wanted to, I was told that the meeting was at 4. I apologize. I was here to represent the flooring variance request at the Green Market at 4 India. So I came in right in the middle of the Slip 14 or whatever that was restaurant. So I just wanted to see if there was, how that went or what the situation was, if you had information or needed questions answered.
No, it was pretty much a no-brainer that they'd have to put a non-absorbent over that area.
So I have specs on the UV oil finish on the floor and its non-absorbency ratings. So does that change anything?
I don't think it's going to change anything the way the board voted.
So it was denied.
So, yes. So for non-absorbents, the board voted for non-absorbent. If you do have specific commercial specs for it,
yes.
If it meets the commercial specs for it, connect with Kathy or
okay.
Art or Don. I mean,
okay.
Because what needs to happen is that it has to be non-absorbent.
Yes, and I don't know if it came up, but we are installing the coving and everything else that needs to happen.
Okay, so connect with John tomorrow.
Okay.
Go from there.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks.
I appreciate all your time.
Thank you, Tori.
Okay, does anybody have anything else? We good? Can we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Get a second?
Second.
All in favor by roll call vote, Malcolm?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes.
Yeah.
Jim yes, let's go home. We're already home. We're already home.
Jim?
It's time for the wine.
Yes.
Meredith Lepre?
Yes.
Melissa Murphy?
Yes, and thanks, Gary, for hanging on so long till we got to COVID.
My
Appreciate it.
pleasure.
Steve Visco says yes. Yeah, thanks, Gary, for coming on.
All right.
All right, take care.
See you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.